Hello everyone. Today we will look at a mysterious case that requires extremely strong nerves, and one that will undoubtedly be judged very ambiguously. The conclusions are up to you, but let's move directly to the case. Lacey Ellen Fletcher was born on November 25, 1985. Her parents were Clay and Sheila Fletcher. The girl was the only child in the family, living in a small village in the state of Louisiana. This village had no more than 1,000 residents. Its name translates as slaughter, which is very fitting for the topic of today's story. When the girl was around 9 years old, her parents moved with her into a new home located in a good residential neighborhood on Slaughter Street. The street ended in a cul-de-sac with large houses and beautiful front yards. From the outside, it seemed like the world there was much more beautiful, and life should have been happier than in other places. The Fletcher family looked like a typical middle-class family. Lacey's mother, Sheila, worked as a court clerk. She was responsible for all administrative procedures in the Baker courthouse. Her father worked for a nonprofit organization. The family was religious and attended church every Sunday. Lacey studied at a Baptist academy and played on the volleyball team there. Neighbors said that Lacey was no different from other children. She was cheerful, active, and loved talking to other kids. She was a petite, well-built girl who enjoyed sports in the yard or ran around the street. However, when she turned 14, her parents pulled her out of school, and from that moment on she was homeschooled. By that time, Lacey had begun to show signs of Asperger's syndrome, although they were not noticeable to an untrained eye. Asperger's syndrome is an autistic disorder often accompanied by impaired empathy, insufficient social competence, and frequently unusual interests. The intellectual development of someone with Asperger's is nearly the same as that of a healthy person, so it is unclear why Lacey was removed from school and placed on home education. Her parents never made any specific public statements on the matter. Perhaps it was connected to the syndrome and social difficulties, but neither neighbors nor children noticed anything unusual in Lacey's behavior. A friend and former classmate later said that they became close immediately when Lacey still attended school, describing her as a very dear person. She noted that Lacey was often reserved and shy, but at the same time could clearly express her opinion about various things. After Lacey stopped attending school at age 14, the connection between the girls was lost, and the classmate barely heard anything about her. Only once, though she couldn't recall from whom, she heard that Lacey regularly visited a psychologist in her teenage years, which at the time was considered somewhat unusual and usually happened for serious reasons. A neighbor of the Fletcher family, Robert, said in 2022 that he last saw Lacey about 15 years earlier, when she was in her early 20s. At that time, the grown girl sometimes hung out with his younger brother, since their houses were next door. Already back then, Robert noticed that she wasn't like other people her age. She simply had different interests. While other girls went to parties, drank alcohol, or liked boys, Lacey preferred watching Disney films alone. After the age of 14, the girl became increasingly withdrawn. She went outside less and less, didn't attend school, and had almost no friends. After she stopped interacting with Robert's brother and disappeared from sight, everyone assumed that the family had moved somewhere, or that Lacey had been sent to study elsewhere. But that was not the case. And if anyone had known that Lacey had been living all those years in her parents' house, she might have been saved. In May 2017, Robert met Lacey's father and decided to ask about the girl, how she was doing, whether she had moved, how her life was going, where she studied, and what she was pursuing. But Lacey's father answered that everything was fine and that she still lived at home, and then quickly changed the subject. All this seemed strange to the neighbor because the girl was already in her early 30s. And living next door, even without digging into other people's lives, you still see neighbors taking out the trash or coming and going. But no one had seen Lacey in years. And that strange deflection from her father left Robert uneasy, though he kept those suspicions to himself. January 2022. At 2:30 a.m., the local police department received a call. It was Lacey's mother, Sheila Fletcher. Her voice was distressed, and she reported that her daughter had stopped breathing. Police and an ambulance immediately headed to the home, notifying the county coroner. When authorities entered the house, they were overwhelmed by a revolting smell, the stench of rot and feces. Breathing inside the house was nearly impossible. Later, The coroner would say that in his entire professional career, he had never encountered anything worse, and he was unable to eat properly for a week due to nausea. He even suffered a nervous breakdown. Despite having worked as a physician and coroner for 30 years, seeing all kinds of incidents and tragedies, what he witnessed in the Fletcher home left him shocked and horrified. The sheriff was also completely stunned by the scene. In the spacious living room was a couch on which Lacey lay. At first glance at her face, one could tell she was about 36, but she looked completely neglected. That was only on first impression. Upon closer inspection, it was revealed that Lacey weighed just 43 kilograms. She was severely emaciated. She was wearing only a t-shirt, and even that was rolled up above her chest. Her eyes were wide open. Her hair was completely matted, resembling a thick woven mat somehow attached to her head, impossible to comb. Her entire body was smeared with feces. Even her ears, nostrils, and mouth contained human waste. Her body was covered in bed sores, some of which were infected and some so deep that they reached the bone. Bed sores typically appear in those confined to a bed due to illness. Lacey's entire body was covered in brown patches and sores. Her buttocks were completely deformed, and skin in places was missing entirely. Lacey was infested with maggots and insects that had burrowed into her body, causing unimaginable suffering. The photos taken at that moment were never released to the media or the internet, as they were simply too horrific and could traumatize people. Even the coroner, police officers, and emergency responders who arrived at the call could not recover from what they saw for a long time. However, publicly available images include photographs of the couch on which Lacey died. The piece of furniture was completely destroyed and rotted. In the spot where Lacey lay with her buttocks, there was a massive hole containing human remains, pieces of skin, pus, and feces. Even the wooden floor beneath the couch was soaked and beginning to rot. During the autopsy, the coroner discovered remnants of the couch's foam padding in the girl's stomach. Apparently, she was so hungry that she began eating the couch. Lacey's cause of death was classified as multifactorial, meaning that it did not occur from a single cause but from a combination of many factors, among them the untreated bed sores, severe bone inflammation, and sepsis. When Lacey was found, her mother Sheila sat on the couch next to her and cried. Her father Clay looked completely emotionless. Naturally, investigators had countless questions. How could a person end up in such a condition? When did the neglect begin? Why did the parents, who lived in the same house with Lacey, do nothing? And how did they allow the situation to progress this far? At first, the girl's parents refused to make any public comments. Later, the mother testified that Lacey grew more and more distant from them, and when she was over 20, she eventually stopped wanting to leave the house altogether. She had no interest whatsoever. At some point, Lacey refused to get up from the couch, after which the parents contacted a doctor, but it was a doctor they visited without Lacey because she wouldn't leave the house. The doctor advised that the girl be taken to the hospital, but Lacey refused to go anywhere, and it seemed the parents did not know what to do next. Her condition worsened, and eventually Lacey stopped even getting up to go to the bathroom. She began relieving herself on towels that her mother placed near the couch, and sometimes right in the bedding, and Lacey lay silently and detached on the soiled sheets. The mother later said she constantly brought her daughter food and drinks and tried to take care of the wounds that developed from lying on the couch all the time. Lacey never complained about pain and remained mentally aware until the very end. When Lacey suddenly stopped breathing, her mother called emergency services, but it was already too late. Rumors later appeared claiming that the parents made the call only because a neighbor saw Lacey through the window, realized something was terribly wrong, and told the mother she must report it to the police, or he would do it himself. Police did not officially confirm this, but as we know, rumors do not appear out of nowhere. They arise when information is missing. It was later revealed that in the 2 days before Lacey's death, her parents were not home at all, and during this time their daughter was left starving. Perhaps the mother left some food on the couch, but regardless, no one took care of her during those days. A question arises. Why didn't Lacey get up from the couch and get something to eat herself if she was conscious and oriented? Some sources suggest that she may have suffered from locked-in syndrome, a condition in which a person is fully conscious but physically almost completely paralyzed, usually due to brain damage. In any case, Lacey essentially lived exclusively on that couch for over 12 years without getting up. During the trial, the jury members needed medical assistance to cope with viewing the photographs of Lacey's body. When the images were shown, the courtroom fell completely silent. Everyone was shocked and could not believe what they were seeing. On May 2nd, 2022, Clay and Sheila Fletcher were charged with second-degree murder and were initially taken to the East Feliciana Parish Jail. The parents repeatedly claimed they were innocent and emphasized that their daughter Lacey had been mentally sound and able to make her own decisions until the very end. On May 4th, the Fletchers were released on a $300,000 bond, and the court process did not end there. They were scheduled to stand trial in February 2023. But how is it even possible to imagine that parents allowed their daughter to literally rot alive on a couch, doing nothing to intervene? They even watched TV in the evenings in the same room, meaning that the couch where Lacey lay stood in the family living room, and at night the parents watched movies while their daughter lay nearby in such a condition. It is unimaginable, given that the smell of feces and rot throughout the house was unbearable. Yet the parents continued to live there as though nothing was wrong. There are even more horrifying details that were never made public. People familiar with the case still wonder how this could have happened, and whether it was a deliberate, gradual process that stretched over 12 years. Lacey lay on that couch day after day, while her condition slowly deteriorated. Her bed sores did not appear overnight. They developed over a long period of time. Another question: if a child, or even an adult, one day says they won't go to the bathroom anymore, how could anyone just ignore this? Even if Lacey was already an adult, there were still ways to place her in a facility where she could receive help, even involuntarily if necessary. Yes, that requires financial resources, but it is hard to believe the parents lacked them. They had stable jobs with decent income, a large house in a good neighborhood, and they were clearly not drowning in debt, considering how quickly they paid the $300,000 bond. It's hard to believe the parents did not find the means to provide their daughter with psychological treatment. Apparently, she had received some care in early adolescence, but why and when it stopped, no one can say. No one can know what was happening inside the parents' minds, or hers. But the fact remains, a healthy person would not voluntarily choose to spend their life lying on a couch. Something must have happened in her mind, and perhaps the parents were unable, or unwilling, to reach her. Lacey's parents were initially charged with negligent homicide, but the charge was eventually upgraded to second-degree murder. Unfortunately, the verdict has still not been delivered, and tragically, the parents continue to live a normal life, not admitting any guilt. Thank you for watching. I recommend checking out other true crime stories. Click right now and subscribe to my channel. See you soon.